Good evening, everyone. Starting a new week off. It's Monday. Welcome to the show. My name is Stuart Davis. I am a flawed man of God. I am a deacon at a small church just outside of Richmond, Virginia. I'm not a pastor. I'm not a biblical scholar, and I haven't been to seminary. I'm not trying to get you to join my church or donate to any special cause. What I'm trying to do here is talk about God, talk about Jesus, talk about the Holy Spirit. Talk about the Bible, talk about Christianity, talk about a wide variety of topics, current events, and issues that we see in the world today, and give you my takes through the lens of somebody who has been a Christian his entire life. 40 years, non-denominational Protestant. Don't subscribe to any particular doctrine or denomination, just in the word every day. So if you are somebody who is interested in learning more about Christianity, maybe you are feeling a tug at the back of your head, just trying to asking you if there's more to life than just what's going on in or more to your existence than just what goes on in this life here on earth. Tune in. Tune in. Let me give you some impressions of what Christianity is like outside of the stereotypes, outside of all the thoughts of the Bible being just a big book of laws. It's very dry. People who go to church are stuck up, judgmental. They're just doing it to, as treating it as a social club, or it's kind of a cult. Everybody's weird. No, I might be a little weird, but I'm also might be somebody that you run into if you go into church. You might run into somebody just like me. So hopefully, hopefully you get something out of this. Hopefully this helps springboard you into a walk in a relationship with God that ends up bringing forth your salvation. If you are already a Christian and you just enjoy Christian topics and discussions, awesome. Glad you're here. You're going to love it. We treat this very similar to a Wednesday night study group or a Sunday school. We have a very small but loyal um, chat full of guys who come in pretty regularly and give their takes, thoughts, and impressions. And that's what I want from you. You guys who are Christians, you guys who are just interested, you guys are undecided. Anybody, if you're watching this stream and you're enjoying it, I highly recommend coming into the chat. I want to hear what you have to say. I want to hear what you have to say. I want to get your insights into things, and we can respond to it. Because the chat is generally small, pretty much anything you say is going to get read. And that's what I want. I want this to be a community where I'm just the mouthpiece, I'm just the face, I'm just the host, and you guys are already a big part of the show, but become more of the show, and maybe more of the show than me. So with that said, everybody, how are y'all doing tonight? See people coming into the chat. Nico, first, starting off the first day of the week with the first chat of the stream. Alias coming in telling Nico that you can't keep just coming on 2 days earlier and saying first. Porcupine's here. Porcupine, we got to talk about this fast. You're killing me. Nico, holy moly beard. It's getting out there, man. It's getting out there. And it's only going to get longer. It's only going to get longer. Y'all are going to be shocked. One day I'm going to get on here and I'm not going to have any beard. I'm going to shave it off. And then all are going to be like, what in the world? Blaine's in the chat. Always good to see you, Blaine. I'm probably going to skip on over to your stream at some point this evening. And there we go. They are judgmental, you straw man building, bearded baptism lover. I love baptism. How's everybody doing? Look, last week was awesome. I sent another thank you to Paul, who came on the show. If you haven't seen the episode yet, it was great. Paul kind of let his hair down, so to speak, got a little personal, which was the crux of it, was to introduce, when we first talked about this, like summer of last week, or not summer of last year. We talked about bringing him on. Schedules could not match up, and we were really trying. Schedules could not match up, but it was, what do we want to talk about? Well, I told Paul I wanted him to talk about Paul in the Bible. Paul, I wanted him to talk about the Anglican faith. I wanted him to talk about Calvinism. I wanted him to talk about a great many things. I wanted him to be a regular personality on the show. But I thought that the first thing we should do was talk about him and kind of introduce him to the group, because I think that he's got that kind of personality where he's going to enjoy interacting with you guys. He's going to enjoy educating us in what he knows and or what theories he has. And I thought that would be a great place. And the fact that I knew that he had been to Hillsong at some point in his life would be a great kind of, middle, the thing that gathers people in. But we learned a lot about Paul and his church. And one of the things I found refreshing, it's always refreshing to find Christians who are kind of on kind of the same speed as you, even though Paul is very much somebody who is way more studied up than me. His attitude, his demeanor, very similar. And I appreciate that. And it's odd. I go to a non-denominational church, and he was describing his church, which, is not doesn't check all the boxes for him, but it is a place that he enjoys and he gets fulfilled. And they don't sound, from what he was describing, very different from my church. Now, I'm sure that there's some differing points on theology, but it sounded like the culture. It sounded like the culture was very similar, and it sounded like the people love Jesus, love God, and it's always a good place to go. And it was what he was looking for: more structure, more focus on God than what we normally see at a lot of big box churches, and a lot of places with a lot of problems. A lot in Twitter, Twitter being one of them. Happy Martin Luther King Day for people who are in America who celebrate that. Martin Luther King, from a religious standpoint, was very troubled and had some very troubling views, but he did further us in better appreciating each other the way that we should, and understanding that we are all God's people, and especially if we're brothers in Christ, we need to understand that. Not accepting each other based on physical attributes is not what God wants. So that's great. That statue was horrendous looking, though, guys. Have y'all seen a picture of that statue that they made? It looks dumb. Why do we release art that looks dumb? I don't understand. Anyways, and so that's what we got out of Paul. It's got the second most views on my channel for one episode. The only one exceeding that is Nick Rekieta's, the stream with Nick Rekieta, which is 66,800 views, as opposed to where he's at, which is at 173. I hope he catches up. But I don't think he will. But again, great episode. And then Thursday night, I was out, announced on the stream. I was doing some work and meeting up with two elders, and we had a fellow on our monthly dinner where we just get together and shoot the breeze and talk a little bit about church business. And it's good and healthy for the deacons and the elders to kind of talk to each other offline and form those relationships. Now, one of them I've been friends with pretty much since I started going to the church. One of the elders. The other one is newer, but we've been getting along famously. We both work on the security side of the ministry at church, and we were joined by another deacon, and hopefully he'll continue to do that. And we just, again, a lot of laughs, a lot of picking at each other, and just stories and eating. I love to eat, guys. That's why I can't do this fast the way that Porcupine does it. But who knows? Maybe if I can get through this, I can do more. But right now I'm kind of hanging in there, and the sweets part, they hit me at different times. Sometimes I'm like, man, I could really use a drink. It'd be nice just to relax and have one. No, just say no. But it's almost it's fleeting, right? Once I get past it and once I decide, no, I'm not going to, I'm good. The problem was this weekend I was taking a road trip around the northern neck and the Tidewater region of Virginia, and I had my son with me, and he was doing a great job kind of helping me out with things that I was doing. And I took him to Dairy Queen, which for some reason he hasn't been to yet. Hadn't been to a Dairy Queen. And I don't know how he has gotten to be as old as he is, and I haven't taken him to Dairy Queen yet. He goes to Sweet Frog a lot. That's where he usually gets his ice cream. We go to Wawa sometimes, but the fact that he had not been to Dairy Queen, really, I was struggling with that. So I took him there immediately. He got what is it? A hot cocoa blizzard. Hot cocoa and cookie blizzard or something like that. And it looked good. And plus, there's all sorts of ice cream there that I love. And I thought, it was tough. It's tough. Look, frozen confectionaries. That's my indulgence. Big indulgence. And I got through it. And he ate it right next to me most of the way home. And I was like, oh man. And then he didn't want any more. Like when he had about that much left, I was like, oh man, I could finish that off just easily. Nope, I was strong. I regretted every moment. I'm like, I've still got a whole month left. I still got a whole month left of this. But I'm glad I did it. I'm glad I'm doing it, and I'm going to have a great job. I've determined today that I'm going to celebrate it by just going out and getting and drinking a little bit when I'm done with all this. All right. So what do we got? Nico Porcupine said, I'm struggling too. Work has been extra hard, making me want to post work, drink, or six. Just Porcupine just drink sweet tea. Right? Drink sweet tea. Is Porcupine. I meant to fast alcohol with you all, but I failed on the 2nd. So I'm going to start in February, 28 days. Might be able to comply. The second day or the second day of the fast, or the second day of January, because that would have been like the day you started. You could also look, if you really want to go hard, give it up for Lent, right? Because we're going to do another one. I'm going to be disappearing off of social media, not YouTube, but I'm going to be disappearing off of Instagram, which I don't post a whole lot on there. I'm going to be disappearing off of Facebook and disappearing off of Twitter for Lent. But I will still be, the post will still come from here when I stream, but I'm not going to be browsing it. I'm not going to be keeping up with it. And that's what I'll get that's what I'll do for Lent. And you guys can figure something out if y'all want to participate. That would be great. It's always good to use times to kind of test your reliance on the things that we maybe indulge in too much. These earthly things. Going back to the statue, big poop farmer hands. $10 million, I would have done it for 9. Gosh, I would have done it for 900,000. could have drawn a picture for $9,000. It would have shown up better than that. It really does look awful. DQ isn't sugar. Don't tempt me, Alias. And it's not necessarily a sugar thing, but it is kind of. It's mostly, it's a dessert. It's a sweets thing. Like I said, my wife was kind of laughing at me about it. Like, why is this such a big deal? I was like, you don't understand. There's always sweets in this house. There's cookies. There's ice cream. There's chocolates. There's always something around the house somewhere. And I destroy them after I get done streaming. Between when I get done streaming and when I go to bed, I'm snacking a lot. And there you have it. There you have it. So I thought that was really good. It's probably better for my it's also a good thing to do for my health that I do, but man, ice cream, man. A milkshake. Milkshakes are my absolute favorite. I love milkshakes more than anything. That's my favorite dessert. Always take a milkshake. But ice cream's obviously right there next to it. So as long as you don't dip the cone, no, it's all sweet. Blaine said, "No dad tax, render under Caesar." He would have given me a bite, and the dad tax in my household is very real. It is very real. But I am open about the fact that in my house is not a free society. This is not this is a benevolent dictatorship. And benevolent party is benevolent in all its decisions. And if you don't believe that the benevolent party is benevolent, some re-education is in order. Alias, 2nd of January. You failed the first day. Porcupine said, "I'll be doing no candy for Lent. I have developed the sweet tooth by cutting booze." I mean, look. What's the thing? Like, a lot of people when they give up, or at least it used to be, a lot of people when they give up smoking would start chewing gum to kind of continue that oral fixation of whatever that they have. I've never had to deal with it. I think now that people vape and then everybody thinks they're lame. Dresden's here. Hello, Dresden. How are you doing? How does you be? Well, we've got a good crowd in here. It's always good to see folks coming in here on a Monday. Mondays are tough sometimes, right? Start of the week. Like, I'm being lazy because I didn't put my background lights up, my light pucks up. So I've got the stupid, I say it's stupid. That's a nice lamp. That lamp is a Henry McKinnon bottle. It's a Henry McKinnon jug of whiskey that's been turned into a lamp. And I've got a matching, and we were just talking about this, ashtray. Henry McKinnon. Which goes with one of my favorite bottles, which is Henry McKinnon 10-year. That I don't drink from nearly enough. But I'm glad to see you're doing good, Dresden. And but Mondays are tough, and it's good to see you guys get into the chat and be here with me. I love you all. Take that into consideration, guys. If any of you guys are feeling down for any bit, if you think no one cares, I care. I'm glad you guys are here. You guys in here matter to me. You all do. And it's not just me that you matter to. I'm sure you have family, but also the most important is our Father. You matter to Him. You matter to Him. So it's good to remember that. If you ever need a reminder, I'm here. I'm here. DM me, do whatever. All right. So tonight we're going to wrap up Solomon at this juncture in the Bible. There's going to be other times where we're reading his writings, but we've talked a lot about Solomon's rise, Solomon's fixing or Solomon's improvement of the nation of Israel and Judah. And now we're going to, and a lot about Solomon's wealth and how much he built. Solomon was a builder in many respects, not just the architectural, building of the palace and Solomon's temple for God. He also built a very powerful Israel. And what did he do it with? Wisdom. And where was that wisdom from? God. So here we go. So now we're going to find out. We're going to see where we can see. We'll see that Solomon is not a perfect human being, as we all aren't. Only one you're going to read. The only one in existence you're going to read about here in the Bible. That'll be when we discuss Christ in the Gospels. All right. Our Lord and Savior, when he arrives, does it the way it's supposed to be done. Solomon did a very good job trying. But we're going to talk about some other stuff tonight with him. And then we'll talk about his end, and then what happens after Solomon dies. Are we going to have a relatively easy transition? Not relatively easy. Are we going to have a relatively easy transition? Is there going to be a lot of controversy? Will there be rebellion? We don't know. I mean, I do. I'm not going to say. I almost sang it, Blaine. I almost sang it. Unironically, I used to enjoy Hoobastank a ton, and still will from time to time. All right, here we go. Let's get into it. 1 Kings chapter 11. Here's your meat. Solomon's wives. King Solomon, however, loved many foreign women besides Pharaoh's daughter, Moabites, Ammonites, Edomites, Sidonians, and Hittites. They were from nations about which the Lord had told the Israels, you must not intermarry with them, because they will surely turn your hearts after their gods. Nevertheless, Solomon held fast to them in love. He had 700 wives of royal birth and 300 concubines, and his wives led him astray. This is not a Jay-Z album. This is not a Jay-Z song. He has got 700, or he's got 1,000 problems, and they're all women. Not, I don't think all of them are, but enough for the problem. As Solomon grew old, 300 porcupines. As Solomon grew old, his wives turned his heart after other gods, and his heart was not fully devoted to the Lord, his God, as the heart of David, his father, had been. He allowed Ashtoreth, the goddess of the Sidonians, and Molech, the detestable god of the Ammonites. So Solomon did evil in the eyes of the Lord. He did not follow the Lord completely, as David, his father, had done. This is not good. This is not good to hear. We've been talking about how wise Solomon is, and yet he allows his wisdom to be clouded by his lust, by his love for women. And what this probably is mostly a result of: complacency. Complacency and desire. Doesn't say anything about drink, like he's doing this stuff drunkenly. So we won't enter into that discussion. But what we do see is he's following women who are not specifically talked directed against. Will not intermarry with them. They will turn, this is God here, they will surely turn your hearts after other gods. We read this in Deuteronomy. or Leviticus. We read this in the Pentateuch. It's definitely in there. And it's definitely from people that were supposed to have been eliminated or at least cast out of Israel. So why invite them back in? It's tits, guys. TNA brought down Solomon. TNA. And this is the worst part. He followed Ashtoreth, the goddess of the Sidonians, and Molech, the detestable god of the Ammonites. So Solomon did evil in the eyes of the Lord. He did not follow the Lord completely as David, his father, had done. Dude, we are talking child sacrifice type gods, especially when you're talking about Molech. On a hill in East Jerusalem, Solomon built a high place for Chemosh, the detestable god of Moab, and for Molech, the detestable god of the Ammonites. He did the same for all his foreign wives who burned incense and offered sacrifices to their gods. Disgusting. Disgusting. And I don't know if any of this is out of hubris. Like I said, this is foolishness. This is foolishness out of a man who has been granted immense wisdom, more wisdom than any man has ever been blessed with, ever was blessed with, and ever will be blessed with. But that doesn't make you, wisdom does not make you impervious to sin. Obedience makes you it. Obedience does. Wisdom is what tells you that obedience is that, but you have to put it in action. You have to be on constant alert. Constant alert for this. And Solomon's love for women, why Solomon so wise would break the most basic commandment of the 10. Is that what happens when you get so intelligent? I think this is the explanation here, Nico. Women. And I'm not saying that all women are a problem, but if you've got women who are not, so later on, and this is where I've got to eat crow. Later on in the Bible, we're going to talk about there's going to be a part where they talk about do not allow yourself to become unevenly yoked, which is discussing basically if you're a Christian, you need to marry somebody else who is a Christian, or they will pull you down. Me and my wife got married. She was not a Christian. Now, I wasn't going to church, but she did not pull down my faith. However, it allowed us to, or it made us vulnerable to making mistakes. And it allowed, even when we were dating, to make mistakes. And I failed as a boyfriend and a husband to be the leader that I should have said. I said, like, and to stand on principles that I should have had at the time that I didn't, and said, nope, we're not doing this. Nope, we're not doing this. Nope, we're not doing this. Now, it's nothing Jack Murphy-ish. That's not my skeleton. But I stuck true enough to the principles that I stuck true enough to the principles that I believe in, that it eventually led her to Christ. So don't marry a non-Christian. Damn, sounds harsh, and sounds so harsh in today's cultural landscape. So, and then I don't know I know a lot of y'all are Rekieta fans, like myself. And when, but you can, and Nick and I have been married to our wives almost the same amount of time. He's been there a few years longer. So we don't understand the scene as much, the dating scene, or the trials and tribulations that single men have right now finding women to marry, to have a relationship with. And the same thing for women, to find men of character to have a relationship with and marry and have kids with, have a family, right? It's tough because it seems like the past 10 years especially, our culture has become so broken that we feel like they're not anywhere around us. You hear Drex talk about it. You hear, I was listening to the Thursday live stream. I was listening to it today with Legal Mindset on his show. It sounds like there's a lot to be worried about. And I know that part. That part's been around for much longer. That you can get yourself into even a marriage, but not just a relationship, but even a marriage with a spouse who has ulterior motives or is not as dedicated to you, as they claim. And it's hard to discern that a lot because it's what's going on in your mind is fighting with your emotions. If you are truly deeply in love with this person, that can lead you to ignore maybe not red flags, but yellow flags, I would say. Things that are like, this is something we need to make sure we hash out and I understand it before we get into this. Is this somebody who is steadfast enough that they are going and committed to me enough that they will stick with me for the duration of our lives? Because that's what marriage is. Is this somebody who's not going to abandon their vows and abandon this marriage? Is this someone who's not looking for a better opportunity? Is this somebody who's only getting married because it seems like the next thing to do or because it's expected of them? Is this somebody who's getting married because they feel like they're getting too old? It's not something to rush into. And it's hard. It's harder now than it is then because a lot of marriages were arranged. So you didn't have a choice. And there was no getting divorced unless you were the man. And that could be a wholly detestable thing to God for men disposing of their wives because insert reason here. There's legitimate reason for it. There are ways to get out. Big one being adultery. Just spilled some, or I didn't spill something. Just tipped an empty cup over. The non-Christian part, Nico, where it comes in here, really has to do with the principles and the fundamentals. That when you're getting married in a marriage that is supposed to be a commitment to each other and God, if she doesn't have God in her heart, as Alias is kind of following up with here, he said, unfortunately, it doesn't matter if she says she's a Christian, it's if she really is. If that commitment is not just with you, but with God, and there's real relationship there, that means something. If not, it's just to you, and you're just a person, and her opinion of you can change. And she might not be willing to work through the issues that you have, and you have them. And the same thing for you. If you're not just committed to her, but also committed to God, you might not be willing to work through the issues that she has. And trust me, she does. We all have issues. A normal person is only somebody you don't know very well. So once you start to learn about people, you learn about their problems, their quirks, their flaws, their sins, vices, all those things. There were different expectations back then, Nico. And I don't know whether it worked better or worse. But part of the problem with arranged marriages back then, I mean, it was so male dominated to the point, and this is not me fighting against the patriarchy, but this is me saying that, and this was an issue that had to be addressed to a point. Look, it's not just it's just men have a responsibility as husbands to be the leader of the family. That means you have a responsibility to treat your wife and your kids with respect and honor and love and want them to be in good health, both physically, spiritually, mentally. Make sure that they're provided for. That's on us. And a lot of men, when given weak men, when given that opportunity, will take advantage of it to the idea that they are in charge. And they will take advantage of the fact that, well, I can just divorce her. And this stuff was happening, right? We'll talk about a point in the gospel where Jesus will run it. It's a very famous one where Jesus has an interaction with a woman who's been married and divorced 5 times. When we get to Hosea is going to be so hard for us to get through because of what goes on in Hosea. And it's good, but at the same, what makes it worse is it's such a reflection of our relationship with God. It's so Hosea is so convicting, and it approaches it from something that we people who are men who take our masculinity and our responsibility as husbands and fathers seriously. It is something we cannot abide. And yet, we'll see when we get there. Hosea is going to be a little difficult. But that's the problem, and that's why. And this is the thing. And you'll hear me talk about it. Han's got a real good way of putting it in perspective. You're driving your car with your feet, and if you don't have, and if you marry, and for me, didn't have an accident. My wife's a Christian. She's deeply spiritual in some ways stronger than me. I didn't get bitten by it. But if you ask people in the church, pretty much everybody, many of them will have accounts that they knew somebody they met who married a person who didn't believe, and they stopped coming to church because wasn't as important to the other one. But the statistics say it's very certain, it's very in no uncertain terms. If the husband starts going to church, the wife follows. It's very consistent. It's much less consistent when the wife starts going to church. The husband follows. And I know I've seen people at church who show up and their husbands don't come to church. I see women who come to church and their husbands don't come. I rarely see men who come to church and their wives don't. Great place to meet people. Church. You know a little bit more about that person on the spiritual side when you talk to them. When you're in a small group class. I'm not saying that it's a dating pool, but man, I mean, if you can't find people, well, first off, you're not going to find women sitting at home. You got to get out there. You got to get out there. But if you're out there and you're finding problems finding women of character, number one, welcome to the club. That's always going to be the case. Same thing with women looking for men of character. But it also means appreciate it and understand, and you need to assess what your standards are as far as the priority of the things you're looking at. You might not look, if you're not a 9 or a 10, you're probably not going to find a 9 or a 10 on the physical side. If you're a 5, you need to be okay with marrying a 5 on the but you want where you want the 9s and the 10s is on the spiritual side. That should be a big priority. Because here we go, guys. If you're going to have kids with these with this woman that you marry, she's going to have a great amount of influence over those kids as well. And it's much better if you're both bringing your child up with God than if not. What did King Solomon not do here? He let the woman decide, he let the wife decide what that she was going to follow whatever gods or goddesses they wanted to and sacrifice to them. It's harder to maintain positive control over this when you have 700 of them and 300 concubines or porcupines, depending on your interpretation. Wives of royal birth, so probably a little bit more confident and assured themselves. How is this not going to end up in disaster? Oh, I get it. It's cool. It's a cool flex. I've got all these wives, but guess what? It ain't a cool flex down here. Because now we're going to continue. The Lord became angry with Solomon because his heart had turned away from the Lord, the God of Israel, who appeared to him twice. Not only that, how many warnings, including one specifically in response to a plea that Solomon gave for the people who follow after Solomon, not just Solomon. But the Lord became angry with Solomon because his heart had turned away from the Lord, the God of Israel, who had appeared to him twice. Although he had forbidden Solomon to follow other gods, Solomon did not keep the Lord's command. And like you said, Nico, it's the first commandment. First and second commandments. So the Lord said to Solomon, since this is your attitude, and you have not kept my covenant and my decrees, which I commanded you, I will most certainly tear the kingdom away from you and give it to one of your subordinates. Nevertheless, for the sake of David your father, I will not do it during your lifetime. I will tear it out of the hand of your son. Yet I will not tear the whole kingdom from him, but will give him one tribe for the sake of David my servant and for the sake of Jerusalem, which I have chosen. So God's like, look, you've really gotten sideways with this. You have absolutely lost the plot, Solomon. You're supposed to have all this wisdom, and you have stupidly cast it aside, chasing tail. So your punishment is going to be all this that you built. You're going to lose it. But because your dad was so great and so loving to me, and I appreciated what he gave and what you had, but really appreciated David so much and made promises to him because of that. I'm not going to do it during your lifetime, but you'll know it. You're going to know about it because once you're dead and you're up here, Your son's going to lose it. But I can't take it all away because, like we've said, from the line of David, Jesus is gonna be born. That's where the prophecies will come. He's not going to lose everything, but he's going to lose most of it. And look, guys, you could perhaps say that this error by Solomon, this consistent error of Solomon, might be the precursor for the rest of Kings and Chronicles. And it ain't pretty. And we're going downhill now, and it's going to get downhill fast. But God has spoken. Then the Lord raised up against Solomon an adversary, Hadad the Edomite, from the royal line of Edom, of course. Earlier, when David was fighting with Edom, Joab, the commander of his army, who had gone up to bury the dead, had struck down all the men in Edom. Joab and all the Israelites stayed there for 6 months until they had destroyed all the men of Edom. But Hadad, still only a boy, fled to I am no man. I fled to Egypt with some Edomite officials who had served his father. They set out from Midian and went to Paran. Then, taking people from Paran with them, they went to Egypt, to Pharaoh, king of Egypt, who gave Hadad a house and land and provided him with food. Pharaoh was so pleased with Hadad that he gave him a sister of his own wife, Queen Tahpenes, in marriage. The sister of Tahpenes bore him a son named Genubath, whom Tahpenes brought up in the royal palace, and there Genubath lived with Pharaoh's own children. While he was in Egypt, Hadad heard that David rested with his ancestors and that Joab, the commander of the army, was also dead. Then Hadad said to Pharaoh, "Let me go, that I may return to my own country." "What have you lacked here that you want to go back to your own country?" Pharaoh asked. "Nothing," Hadad replied, "but do let me go." That's a nice, honest answer. No, your hospitality has been awesome. I wouldn't change it for the world, except I got to go. Please let me go. And God raised up against Solomon another adversary, Rezon, son of Eliada. Rezon, son of Eliada, who had fled from his master Hadadezer, king of Zobah. When David destroyed Zobah's army, Rezon gathered a band of men around him and became their leader. They went to Damascus, where they settled and took control. Rezon was Israel's adversary as long as Solomon lived, adding to the trouble caused by Hadad. So Rezon ruled in Aram and was hostile towards Israel. So not everything was peaches and cream because of this. Nico said, "Not going to lie, she just got to be hot enough. I'm weak like King Solomon." Glad that you're taking this in stride, Nico. I said I'm weak like Adam. Y'all need to stop. So now we've got two foes. That's Solomon, who could have lived in relative peace, and instead, conflict. Also, Jeroboam, son of Nebat, rebelled against the king. He was one of Solomon's officials, an Ephraimite from Zereda, and his mother was a widow named Zeruiah. Then his own courts conspiring against him. Here's the account of how he rebelled against the king. Solomon had built the terraces and had filled in the gap of the wall of the city of David, his father. Now Jeroboam was a man of standing. And when Solomon saw how well the young man did his work, he put him in charge of the whole labor force of the tribes of Joseph. About that time, Jeroboam was going out of Jerusalem, and Ahijah, the prophet of Shiloh, met him on the way, wearing a new cloak. The two of them were alone out in the country, and Ahijah took hold of the new cloak he was wearing and tore it into 12 pieces. 12 pieces. Then he said to Jeroboam, "Take 10 pieces for yourself, for this is what the Lord, the God of Israel, says. See, I am going to tear the kingdom out of Solomon's hand and give you 10 tribes. But for the sake of my servant David and the city of Jerusalem, which I have chosen out of all the tribes of Israel, he will have one tribe. I will do this because they have forsaken me and worshipped Ashtoreth, the goddess of the Sidonians, Chemosh, the god of Moabites, and Molech, the god of the Ammonites, and have not walked in obedience to me, nor done what is right in my eyes, nor kept my decrees and laws as David, Solomon's father, did. Perichin Baka, hey! Glad you made it. We've missed you, Perichin. You came in that one stream, and it was awesome. Like I said, you did a lot. You were very, very much appreciated contributor, and I'm glad you're here. And I'm glad you came back. So Jeroboam is not just some upstart popping up and he's not just some upstart popping up because he desires power in Israel. He's kind of run into a prophet who says, look, you see this cloak? A cloak of many colors, maybe? It's nice and new, tore it into 12 pieces. Here, take 10. This is a symbol of what you're going to do. But you got to leave this one. Everyone is here. But I will not take the whole kingdom out of Solomon's hand. I have made him ruler all the days of his life, for the sake of David, my servant, who I chose and who obeyed my commands and decrees. I will take the kingdom from his son's hands and give you 10 tribes. I will give one tribe to his son, so that David, my servant, may always have a lamp before me in Jerusalem, the city where I chose to put my name. However, as for you, I will take you, and you will rule over all that your heart desires. You will be king over Israel. If you do whatever I command you, and walk in obedience to me, and do what is right in my eyes by obeying my decrees and commands, as David my servant did, I will be with you. I will build you a dynasty as enduring as the one I built for David, and will give Israel to you. I will humble David's descendants because of this, but not forever. Solomon tried to kill Jeroboam, but Jeroboam fled to Egypt, to Shishak the king, and stayed there until Solomon's death. As for the other events of Solomon's reign, all he did and the wisdom he displayed, they are not written in the book of the annal. I'm sorry, let me rephrase this. As for the other events of Solomon's reign, all he did and the wisdom he displayed, are they not written in the book of the annals of Solomon? Solomon reigned in Jerusalem all over Israel 40 years. Then he rested with his ancestors and was buried in the city of David, his father. And Rehoboam, his son, succeeded him as king. So there you have it. Rehoboam and Jeroboam are going to be at odds. And we've gotten past the two righteous kings, the two true righteous kings of Israel and Judah. However, big difference. Here's a big difference between David and Solomon. Sometimes some things Solomon does that kind of put him above David, but then there's other things that bring him below. That I mean, they have their own reasons to admire them, and their reasons to understand why they were not perfect. David always God first. God first. Both of them problems with women, right? But none of the women David was married to or taking as concubines would he allow to worship all of this. This is big time bad. And God is big mad over it. And we're going to read some more of Solomon's writings later on in the Bible. But at the end of his life, Solomon had kind of screwed the pooch. And this is where we're going to leave him for now. Perichin, so if you are where you are you part of the Orthodox, Catholic, or because I know the Orthodoxy is big over there, Para. Or are you Protestant? Ortho, Prot, or Catholic? Bingo. Lack of self-control. Here's the real part. Lack of self-control and desire to please others. But he also rested with his ancestors afterwards. Look, God still made, or Solomon still made God very happy at times. And it's there is real honor in that. And in his later writings, it becomes very clear that Solomon kind of bemoans some of his decisions. But again, first commandment. Let's go all the way back. We're gonna roll it back. You shall have no other gods before me. You shall not make for yourself an image in the form of anything in heaven above, nor on the earth beneath, in the waters below. You shall not bow down to them or worship them. Yeah. He definitely did that. Parchin, I'm trying to figure out my denomination right now. I was raised as a Protestant, attended Orthodox many times through, but discovered Catholicism after going abroad, and I like that too. There really is a lot to like about each of the denominations, and I know that there's people who want to put me to the torch for that. But the reason why they want to put me to the torch is because there is very real reasons to be wary of those other denominations, because we do have our drawbacks. Big one, for me, the biggest one is the Pope. The Pope is the biggest one for me in Catholicism. But there's a lot of beauty in it too. Protestants are only 1% in Ukraine, but they are very active. Yeah, I was talking to because I think that you had said you came over from Blaine's stream, and so Blaine was on here, and Blaine had said, where you were, so that sometimes you're not able to get on streams, and said, and kind of in no uncertain terms kind of explained why. And I understand. I brought up the fact that let me bring it over here. There is a man whose mission we supported over in Odessa, and he wrote this book, A Dumb American in a Strange Country. His name is John Murphy, and he is a Protestant. And he married and lived a couple of decades, almost 2 decades, I think he had been living in Odessa doing mission work for the Protestant faith. I don't know if he was a Baptist or non-denominational, but definitely Protestant. And when things got dicey over there, last year, he grabbed his wife and his kids who are Ukrainian by birth. His wife is Ukrainian. I think she's got some Russian relatives, and his kids who were all born there. And got out of there. They were on like the last bus before they closed the border, and so they got back here, and we let them borrow a car of ours while they were getting settled. I told them as long as they needed it, they could use it, and so they came over to pick it up, and he was kind of giving me a story. I need to talk to him about getting him on the stream to kind of talk about being a Protestant missionary in an Orthodox country that can be openly hostile to Protestants and Catholics. So what is it like to be in that situation? Because we talk a lot about missionaries in places where it's legitimately dangerous to be a Christian of any stripe. China, places in Africa, other places in the Middle East and Asia. These are like fear for your life places. But a lot of times we don't talk about places in like South America and places like the Eastern Europe and Ukraine, where Eastern Europe and Ukraine, where another denomination other than Protestantism is dominant. And the Orthodoxy is kind of a foreign denomination here in America. They're very small. There's not a lot of them out there. I think it's a growing presence. There's a growing presence of them. They're becoming definitely more popular online, but not always for the right reasons, I don't think. I've had Thaddeus Patrick on. He is the orthodoxy that I admire. his brand of it. And I'm sure there's others that I can, but he's the one I've talked about it. Oh, yeah, that would be awesome, Baca. That would be great. But yeah, what is it like? Let me put it back here a little bit. Nika said lack of self-control, sure, but to please others, I don't think I've seen that. I think he's we didn't see it at the beginning of his reign because he was cleaning house. But I think that he was a happy ruler. I think the overall tone that we see out of Solomon he is building things, he's glorifying God a lot, and he probably wants people to be happy because he's been blessed. And he's seeking that out. And there you go. I might be misunderstanding, but I'm thinking I want my rib back. Blaine says, anytime, hang on it. Stop it. StreamYards. Why are you being this way? There we go. Anytime someone claims someone is good because they are smart, wise, we have the direct example that it doesn't mean everything. Exactly. Wisdom is one thing. Putting it into action is another. And I think that's probably the big part. Barachin talking to Nico. I thought he built those altars to please all his women, and it's something applicable to Christians. We wasn't be so eager to please others that we'd betray the creator of all things good. Amen, amen, amen. And we do it in a different way in America by tolerating by affirming things that we shouldn't. Our government is largely secular. It's founded on Christian principles because the founders were Christians, were largely Christians. And the culture was definitely Christian values based. However, it is still a secular government, and it has become more and more secular and more incongruous with Christianity as a lot of these more progressive ideas have come into place. The government acknowledges homosexual marriage. That's the easiest one to pick on, right? The government acknowledges homosexual marriage up until, and still kind of is okay with abortion. They've kind of turned it back to the states now after this. But for many, many years, I mean, the government was like, yeah, abortion's fine. We need to stop affirming it just because the culture thinks it's okay. We're Solomon. And I don't know, Nico, and like I said, I don't know you and much of your story, but I can say that there have been times where I have allowed my principles to kind of slip because I've wanted somebody around me to feel comfortable. And it has gotten inside of my brain. That doesn't mean that I'm going to shun people, mistreat them because they do things I don't agree with. That's not where I'm coming from. But the Beth Moores out there and the ELCAs out there that want to affirm things just because the culture has decided it have forgotten that we don't let the culture decide things. We don't let your feelings decide it. We let God decide it. And it is in the word, in the infallible word of God here in boop. Crap, now I popped it out. Right here. Throughout the Old Testament, throughout the New Testament, we are given word after word and tale after tale and parable and account and historical account and whatever to help us out. And yet we still do these things. And some of these people probably legitimately love God, probably, but they don't keep the commandments. They don't obey God. And where does that leave them? I don't know. I'm not sitting here trying to judge people whether they are risking their salvation or not. That's between them and God. But I don't think it's a good idea. He's not one to poke, and yet we poke him often. And we keep finding what feels like new and interesting ways to do it. But as we read about the Israelites, they're not. They're not new and interesting ways. They've been done before, and they all end in disaster. And God doesn't appreciate it. Blaine said Catholicism felt very distracting long before I knew the papal issues. My mom was is very has a great deal of antipathy toward Catholicism. She was raised Catholic, and she felt like when she converted to Protestantism, there was a lot that Catholicism kept from her. And I don't know how much of that was because of how she was worshiping and the fact that there wasn't a strong Catholic man in her life, because my grandfather was an ass. And he was definitely not somebody that you would want to mentor people. And so she just didn't get what she was supposed to out of it. But that was what I was raised kind of with that in the background. And it took me a lot of talking with Catholics to kind of understand that there is legitimate worship and there is legitimate desire to do God's will within Catholicism, to get over that. Perichin said it was a crazy time in February, March for people getting out. Much obliged for you for helping them out. Yeah, I was glad to see them. They left everything basically except for the clothes that they were wearing and some backpacks, which is kind of sad. And that stuff's probably either been destroyed or looted. And I don't know if they're planning on coming back. I guess that'll be a question for him. But right now, they're still stateside, and I'm supposed to have them by Perichin. I'm supposed to be hosting them at some point for a get together, and they are supposed to be treating me to some traditional Ukrainian food, which I've never had. I have no idea what Ukrainian food is, what traditional Ukrainian food is. I would love to try it though. And you say, I like the rules and like the continuity, but I get where you're coming from. Yeah. I would love to get on in here. I'd love to get on stream and talk about the Soviet Union. Obviously, I wasn't there, but my parents were. Yeah, Ukraine, big deal. Um, I am a huge Tom Clancy fan, and a lot of um, his books are about the Soviet Union, mostly post-Soviet Union, um, Russia, which involved Ukraine, and you could tell from his writing that he had a lot of he had a great deal of respect for the folks in Russia, Ukraine, and basically the Eastern Bloc. Alias South America is going that way too. My nephew just called back or just came back from Honduras because things are getting sketchy down there. Bless me. Yeah, but the other thing is what we're seeing a lot of evangelical growth down there. Catholicism is shrinking. Evangelical belief is growing big time, which is interesting. And hopefully, what I worry about, because the evangelical side of non-denominational faith isn't as well structured. It isn't as well disciplined. The big thing that South America needs to get out of its Catholic faith is the old gods that they still include in there, like Pachamama. And that's not the only one. And I think that has somewhat compromised many people down there in their faith. Isn't there another whole divide between Western and Eastern Ortho? Orthodoxy is kind of like a confederation, the way I see it, from a very uneducated viewpoint. It seems more like a confederation of a denomination. And they're all kind of operating independent of each other, but they both have, but at the same time, they do have some sort of, I don't know. I need to get Shay back on to talk about it a little bit more. But the big thing with them is, again, they don't have a big presence. And so we don't know many about them. You don't meet many Orthodox folks. Perichin said, it's so sad. My parents spent a lot of time in Nigeria, which has one of the largest Christian populations, but still there's such a big problem with terrorism against Christians since the 2010s. And there is even worse in other places in Africa. The main split between the Chalcedonian and Oriental Orthodox and Greek Orthodox, there's still small sects that split off like the old believers. Perichin's in it. Perichin lives it. So again, go more with that. Porcupine, sorry, gents, going to put my daughter to bed and sing some Johnny Cash to her. Good night, all, and stay strong in your faith and trust the Lord. Amen. Porcupine, take it easy, sir. I know you've probably dropped off. That was about 8 minutes ago you sent that. Thank you, sir. Be good. Perichin said, I stayed in the U.S. for part of 2022, and I encountered quite a few churches, Methodist and Episcopalian. Mostly that proudly affirm non-traditional things. Given the history of the U.S., I see why a church might be eager to appear open, but to all. But I feel like it's a slippery slope. It is huge. And funny you should mention Methodist and Episcopalian. They have been some of the biggest violators of God's commandments. The Methodists kind of started it with, and an interesting little tidbit I picked up. My buddy was talking about how he got into this argument over Paul's teaching about how men lead the church and women are support. or in a support role. And he has having an argument about it this years ago, like years and years ago, with a classmate who was Methodist. And he said basically the Methodist approach. I don't know if this is canon, but the Methodist approach to Paul is that he wrote that because he had a bad experience with women, and so that seeped into his writings. But to say that seeped into his letters that God intended for him to write to be put in the Bible means that God let that come in when it's an error, as opposed to that's the right thing to get put in there. So the Methodists have had women preachers, and to me, again, it's not I'm trying to be sexist. This is the order of these are rules given to us from God on how the church should be run through Paul, and that's generally the first step. The egalitarianism is the first step in what you're to affirming non-traditional things. The Episcopalians are barely Christian at this point. They are so close to Unitarians, I can barely see the difference. The Methodists in America are being divorced from the African and Asian Methodist churches because they have become so proudly affirming, and they have had and the African and Asian churches and some of the American ones have said enough, and so they're starting their own Methodist denomination. So you'll have the United Methodist Church, which will remain in place, and then you'll have the Global Methodist Church. Sin is our way of doing things, and often it feels right. Parrot, you got such a great you have such a great grasp, I feel like. Or at least it's similar to mine. I like it. It's refreshing. They don't finish the line. Churches should be open to all seeking the truth of Christ. But isn't it better to listen to the way of an all-knowing, benevolent being? It's hard, but it's hard. The path is narrow. That's the problem. We get so caught up in ourselves with what we feel is right, we forget that we already have kind of an instruction manual. And yeah, I get it. It's there's some some levels of interpretation, and maybe some discussion on some of it, but it's very clear on the basic level that so many churches are getting wrong, and it is awful, and it's hard to see. It's hard to see because we get so wrapped up in what we think should be right, we forget to go check and see, is it right? And stop trying to try to interpret it to agree with us, instead of just saying, okay, it is what it is. And I'm just wrong about it. And I just have to suck it up and be wrong and follow what is right. Because God is the truth, right? He is the truth. He is the center that we orbit around, and we all try to just get closer in that orbit, just closer and closer in that orbit. Sometimes we'll stray away, but the goal is to get right in there in everything we do. I thank the Lord that God is slow to anger. Boy, man, he's got to be right now. It's got to be a slow burn, though, right now. That's simmering. My grandma could not even get close to a worship headspace without Episcopal services, Catholic light. They are Christian extra light. They are diet Christian light. Caffeine-free diet Christian light. Baklava? That's Greek. Baklava is Greek. Oh, I recently made myself some borscht because I was so homesick for Ukraine. Properly made Ukrainian food is very hearty. I thought baklava. Look, I go to a Greek restaurant and they got baklava there. I'm so confused. By the way, Perichin is correcting y'all's spelling there. What is calva? Kavla, Kalva. What is that? I wonder. Alias, good to know. First time I had baklava was from a Greek boss of mine. So, oddly enough, down the street from where I live is a Greek restaurant that has been classified as like one of the top 10 restaurants in the state or in the country or whatever for food, for Greek food. It's not a 5-star restaurant. It's kind of a dive. In fact, the building it's in has been a million different places and restaurants. It used to be a gas station. But it has got good food. Really good Greek pizzas. Yeah, the disorganization on both Orthodox and Protestant circles is what no pope does to a denomination. Well, yeah. I feel like Catholicism has got kind of a no pope, and they're kind of headed that way too. This is great. Look, I can barely keep up with y'all's chatting. I'm just starting to catch up. And then we're gonna tune out at that point. I'll wrap the show up. Bible Illustrated and Gabby Hours have some good content on both churches if you want to learn from it. Yeah. Like I said, I got a guy who's Orthodox. He's American Orthodox, so it's kind of a more relatable thing. He's also very careful. Like if I ask him a question, he goes, "I'm not really sure. I need to read up on it more before I say something about it." And to me, that's an honest man who's measured in what he's going to say. I'm pretty sure baklava is made by everyone. I had Greek ones, but when a Ukrainian friend at school brought some, it was way better for some reason. Parachin, the thing that got on my nerves was the United Methodist Church in the U.S. making the decision to change their doctrine on same-sex marriage over the opposition of Korean and African churches. Over the opposition of the Bible, too, right? Ah. Why? The United Methodist Church gets on my nerves in general because of this. And they don't care. And they act like nothing's wrong. Huh. Who, us? Who, us? Alias will eat baklava from anywhere except for North Korea. Here's a question. Blaine, is there going to be baklava on your food truck? Parachin, that Methodist student claimed that Paul's non-existent prejudice against women had seeped into God-breathed scripture, didn't realize that his individualistic Western interpretation had seeped into his. Yeah. Well, I mean, that's what he grew up thinking as the Methodists, and the Methodists are very much very American. If for 2000 or at least 17, this is your parents, and you should have been. You need to be on this. You need to be in this chat more because we talk about this all the time. If for 2000 or at least 1700 years, the Christians agreed on something, how can one random person decide that they were wrong all along? Second Thessalonians said to respect the traditions of the apostles found in the word and passed on by word of mouth. And it says so because he knew we'd live in cultures pushing us away from the objective truth. Of course he did, because an entire nation and a half, I guess, if you want to count Judah, was founded legitimately by him as part of prophecy and part of a promise. And yet they did it. So of course everywhere else is going to do it. But this is the thing, and you see this on Christian Twitter all the time. I love how they said how a lot of the correct viewpoints on this pointed out. They go, yeah, up until 5 minutes ago, everybody in the church agreed on this, but now all of a sudden, somebody has this new interpretation. Now all of a sudden, egalitarianism and modernism is just seeping into these churches, rotting them from the inside out. It's pissing me off. It pisses them off. It pisses y'all off. Everybody's mad. And people stop going to church because, again, people who are honest and search in honest and truly searching righteousness are going to hear a sermon. They're going to be taught this stuff. They're going to look in the Bible. They're going to see that it's wrong, and they're going to leave. And they're either going to leave Christianity or they're going to just leave the church. Either way, ELCA is bleeding members. Either way, Episcopalians, bleeding members. Either way, Methodists losing a big chunk of their people. So there you have it, guys. There you have it. Kalava is tartar food made from honey and sunflower seeds. I could do that. I like sunflower seeds. I like honey. I just want to be remembered as the thief on the cross. Am I going to have to pull that video back up? I just want to be remembered as the thief on the cross when Christ said to him, tonight you will be in heaven with me or in the kingdom with me, whichever way. I just want to be with Christ. Amen to that. It's just, again, there's these moments in the Bible where a man or a woman, a person does something and God truly appreciates it. And you're like, man, to be, don't we all want to do things that God appreciates? But not just that, to do it that God appreciates, but just have the knowledge that what you did made God happy. To be acknowledged in that way would be such an amazing thing. I should probably never know. My head would explode. My ego couldn't take it. My heart couldn't take it either. I would probably turn into a blubbering Glenn Beck, right? A Christian Glenn Beck. And there you go. So, Blaine said no baklava on his food truck. I mean, is it even a food truck at that point? What are you doing with your life, Blaine? He's going to have a spoiler on his food truck, but he's not going to have baklava. Parachin, ulterior motives for making friends. Look, I can't crap on him too much because I love going to other cities to eat food. I love trying. I'm not a foodie, but I like trying other people's traditional foods. I'm not eating monkey brains. I'm not going to eat haggis. But I like trying differently prepared food. Whatever the ulterior motive is when I say, I will help you bury anything if you keep bringing me this food. All right. All right. Will you try a dog dish? No. I've already had dog food when I was a kid. I ate some dog food. So I've checked that box off my list. All right, guys. That's a good show, right? Lots of chat, guys. This is what I'm talking about. This is a Monday, guys. This is a Monday. I got you guys talking and chatting and giving great takes, asking great questions. I said, it's awesome to see. Giving praise to God, just desiring to do more. Ephesians 2:10, you are God's masterpiece, and you will accomplish everything he has prepared for you. Hopefully, prepare some food. Before you fast from social media, make sure to follow Yakimona Yatai on all the socials. Yeah, Blaine, send me a message on Facebook, and I'll do that there, and I'll do it on Instagram. Raw horse was amazing. What? Raw horse was amazing? Tuna, sushi, texture, and beef. Get out of here. Look, raw horse is something you eat when you're when you're under siege and you're out of provisions. Out of here, Blaine. Blaine, stop. Stop. No, Parachin, we're in the middle of two fasts right now. Oh, or we're in the middle of one fast and we have another fast coming up for Lent. So around the 2nd of January, we started a fast. Well, I'm sorry, Porcupine started a fast. He asked about this before the new year, and I said I would do it. I forgot about it. So we started on the 6th. I started on the 6th. A lot of us started on the 6th. And we're just fast. We've picked different things to fast from. Some of us are fasting from alcohol. Some are fasting from marijuana. Some are fasting from food from sun up to sunset. Some, me, fasting from alcohol and from desserts slash sweets slash things I shouldn't be eating that are tasty. I have one cheat day that I've given myself for a very specific reason. And I'll just add it on to the end of of my fast. And I'm not even sure if I'm going to cheat that day, but I've allowed myself that one day. And then for Lent, I'm going to be fasting from social media. Bastermak is a really tasty Armenian dish that's raw. No baklava on the food truck, no soup for you. Are you really even trying? All right, here we go. All right, guys, great stream tonight. Glad you guys were here. Perichin, dude, or ma'am, glad to have you here. I would be interested in hearing more at some point about life in Ukraine. Again, it'll be interesting or in talking about the Soviet Union, getting stories from your parents about the old Soviet bloc and stuff like that. We fast we fast Lent in Ukraine too, using the Julian calendar. It is known as the Great Fast, and it's hard. I like food all the time. I guess I'm going to work my way up for that, but I'm an American. In that way, I'm a very American through and through. I'm so lustful of food. I could be disgusting, Alias. Get out of here. I could be the Solomon. If I was Solomon, food was what would get me. All right, everybody. So to Alias, Perichin, Blaine, Nico. Who else do we have in here? Gotta scroll up a little bit. Porcupine, who's going to probably catch the rest on the back end. Dresden. I think that's it for the folks tonight. And anybody watching who hasn't commented, all of you guys, if you like what you're hearing, subscribe. You can follow me on Twitter. I'm a little bit spicier on Twitter, a little bit more outspoken. You can follow me on Twitter, but the real important thing, Twitter's not important. The Facebook page isn't important. My Instagram, not important. What's important about what I'm doing is here on the streams, night in and night out. A flawed man of God. Like, subscribe, and if you have somebody that you know who might appreciate it, who might be looking for something like this, by all means, share it. Share it out into space or whatever. Maybe you'll catch somebody who will appreciate it. Maybe one of your friends on Facebook, maybe one of your followers on Twitter, maybe one of your admirers on Instagram. Maybe one of them will say, "Oh, yeah, well, they recommend it. I'll check it out." And maybe they find it. Maybe somebody who's looking like, maybe this will help me better understand Christianity to the point of, "Oh, okay, I kind of like this. This isn't what I thought it was. Let me go learn more from somebody else because I'm not not that smart of a guy." Thank you, Perichin, for saying you're learning from me. But I am not the greatest source. I am still very much a lay person. And Perry, we will keep you in our prayers. We will keep you and others like you in our prayers. If any of you guys need prayers, ask for them. And all of us pray for each other. This is a great group of folks. So that said, everybody have a great evening, and God bless.